Sorry, go.
Okay, we'll get started. Thank you. Thank you all for joining today. Today, as Leo has already said, we will be covering special education operating procedures. I'm Tammy Piercy. I am director of a new division just created last week, I guess. Our name is Special Education Program Policy, Engagement, and Reporting. So as you can imagine from all of those words in combination, we do a little bit of everything. One of the things that we are working with Region 18 with is getting operating procedures uploaded. And so today's presentation will give you a little overview of what is expected this year and the timeline for that, and a little bit more information. So again, Leo has indicated that you can enter questions. Our intent, just before we get started, is if you don't get your questions answered through the slide deck today, or at the end, if we were able to point you back to anything in the slide deck, this deck will be available on our website in the coming days. And also we will be coming back around on the 24th to the same group to answer any questions that may come up between now and then, or as a result of the information we're provided today. So we want your questions, so please give us your questions, circle those up to your ESCs in the coming weeks, and we will be back to answer questions on the 24th as well. So today, you can go to the next slide. And the agenda today is to cover a few things. We're gonna have a little introduction and some questions that will be answered throughout the slide. Go through some requirements, go through the new templates for 22-23, talk about those template structure and optional use optional use of the templates, and the monitoring activities that will happen as a result of your policy procedure uploads. Some timeline and resources we'll provide you, and then Lee will give us an overview of how to access the legal framework for the authoring system for you to upload and provide those to us. And then we'll have a little closing, and if we have time for a few questions, then we'll circulate those questions. So let's get started. So today we're going to answer these questions, a few of these questions. We're going to answer what is a statutory authority, requiring LEAs to develop and implement those policies and operating procedures, and why are they going to be uploaded to the legal framework. We'll explore what the difference between school board policies and special education operating procedures are. We'll also explore what the difference between special education operating procedures and evidence of practice is. We also will talk about when board policies and operating procedures will be linked or uploaded and need to be linked or uploaded in the legal framework. And we'll answer the question, are LEAs required to use operating procedure templates found in the legal framework or not? Lastly, we'll talk about how are policies and operating procedures uploaded or linked in the legal framework. What I just described, Lee will join in on that. Hopefully these questions will get answered throughout the presentation. If you have any other questions beyond these, or some supplements to these questions, again, please note those down and we'll get those raised up before the 24th. Let's go to the next slide. So let's get started here with the first section is authority, I believe. Susan, you can advance. Our requirements, go ahead. So we have statutory authority that requires the state to do a couple of things here. First, the state must have in effect policies and procedures to ensure that it complies with the monitoring and enforcement requirements that we find under Code of Federal Regulations in 300.600 through 602 and 606 through 608. And then those monitoring and enforcement requirements, it requires the state to take certain actions to ensure that students are receiving a FAPE. And that ties back to local operating policies and procedures and the evidence of those practices through the programs they implement. So the other thing we see in statutory requirements related to this is that the LEA, that's you guys, in providing the education of children with disabilities within your jurisdictions, you must have in effect those policies and procedures and programs that are consistent with the state policies and procedures established under 300.101 through 163, which those are related to all of the FAPE requirements in implementing IEPs and evaluations with students, and 165 through 174. So those components that you find under those regulatory requirements should be evident in your policies, procedures, and programs implemented in line with what the state has made in effect to their state policies and procedures. Okay, so that's where we get authority to do this work and requirements, and while we're doing some of the uploads and the monitoring activities here. Next slide, please. So this is a really good slide for reference on what is the difference between policies, procedures, and practices. And so here we've outlined this through some definition, but basically in the simplest form, you can remember this. Policies are the what. So those are your board policies, local and legal board policies that state the written rules that you will follow, the LEA will follow as it meets its responsibilities and conducts business. So those are your legal and local policies you see in your board policies. Procedures are the how. So your procedures, we're asking you to explain how those board policy and local policies will be implemented in your day-to-day. So basically procedures are the step-by-steps, instructions that you can provide to your practitioners, your service providers, your staff, and to parents to understand what the instructions are, how LEA uses to follow those rules that are written in legal and local board policy. And lastly, the practices are basically the evidence. So in a monitoring protocol, you would think these are the things that we're going to be looking at the most to make sure that those practices are evidenced, whether it's through observation or documentations, that those procedures are written accurately to implement the legal and local policies that your board has adopted. And those policies should be in line with what the state policies and procedures are. So we're looking for evidences can be in all kinds of forms, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But when the LEA creates and implements its policies, there has to be some kind of evidence of that, like I said, observed or from some documentation. It would be, we'll talk about this in a minute as well, but when we get to evidences of practice in uploading those informations to the legal framework, we're not looking for you to upload actual evidence. We're looking for your explanation of what you would be able to provide in evidence of those policies and procedures. So next slide, please. So just a breakdown of the school board policies. If you're unfamiliar with this, I hope you're not unfamiliar, but Heavy's going to go through some school board policies, go through the next sections for you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Back up one. Thank you. There are two parts to the school board policies. The first part is the legal part. The legal part consists of federal and state law along with court decisions, and these all provide the statutory context in which all policies should be read. The second part of the school board policies is the local part. The local part reflects the decisions made by the Board of Trustees. The local part should always be in compliance with the legal part. The legal and the local parts distinguish between the requirements of an extensive body of law, of school law, and the policy determinations of the local board. So the legally referenced legal policies track the language of the US and Texas constitutions, the federal and state statutes, including the Texas Education Code, the Attorney General opinions, the Texas Administrative Code, which also includes commissioners and State Board of Education rules. And then the legal part also includes other sources of authority defining the legal context for local school district governance and management. Local policies are identified by the designation local, obviously, and the local policies that are preceded by a legal policy in the same code generally expand on or qualify the legally referenced provisions And then other local policies that stand alone, reflecting those reflect the board's intentions in areas not otherwise addressed by law. Next slide. So let's look specifically now at how special education operating procedures and practices work with board legal and local policies. Operating procedures describe how the LEA implements its special education board legal and local policies. This should serve as a living resource that is meant to be updated on a regular basis to ensure that procedures include any changes in legal requirements set by federal and state regulations, and also changes in the local board policy. The special education practices are evidenced and observable implementations. This could be evidenced in a variety of documentation types, through monitoring interviews or on-site observations, or other demonstrable application of policy and operating procedures. So before moving on to the new operating procedures, let's take a moment and review the 2020, 2021, and the 2021, 2022 requirements for operating procedures. Next slide, please. Beginning in 2020, 2021, LEAs were required to upload or link special education operating procedures along with LEA local policies to the legal framework website. The requirement for LEAs to provide local special education operating procedures in the legal framework is part of the Texas of Education Agencies, the TEA's efforts to ensure all LEAs have policies, programs, and procedures in place that meet IDEA's child find, evaluation, and FAPE requirements. During the 2021 and 2022 school year, LEAs were again required to upload or link special education operating procedures in the legal framework related to child find, evaluation, and FAPE by October 29th, 2021. So basically for two years, the same operating procedures have been required to be uploaded or linked in the legal framework. In September of 2021, LEAs were noticed that beginning in 2022, 2023 school year, special education operating procedures will be uploaded or linked to the legal framework on or before August 31st, 2022, and additional operating procedures will be required. So up next is Susan with information on the 2022-2023 operating procedure templates. Susan?
Okay, I'm here. So beginning in 2022-2023, there will be some new templates available for you to upload. Those new templates are the Admission Review and Dismissal Committee meeting, the Transition Graduation Composite, Parent Participation, the LRE Composite, and the regular FAPE Composite. And I'll go into those a little bit more right here. The operating procedure templates that do not have sub-content areas are the ARD committee meeting and the parent participation templates. So the ones with sub-content areas are the transition and graduation composite. That one includes transition services and graduation. The LRE environment composite includes the least restrictive environment, placement in a residential facility, and virtual learning days. The operating procedure template, some sub-content areas and special factors. So under the FAPE composite, the last one has some special factors included. Those are behavior, English learner, blind, visually impaired, communication, deaf or hard of hearing, assistive technology, and autism. So there are several sub-content areas under special factors. So the structure and optional use of the legal framework operating procedures templates. So there are different options for creating your operating procedures. Option 1, LEAs use the templates provided in the legal framework. previous and new. So we still have the previous ones, and then we have these new ones. Option 2, LEAs can create their own documents, or option 3, LEAs may purchase a commercial product. They can be used, the TEA's optional templates can be used at no cost. They are intended to provide technical assistance. They have some support built in. We'll go over that in a minute. They are copyrighted, so they are not for commercial use, and they may be revised or edited by the LEAs, so you can make changes to them. But again, you're not required to use the legal framework templates. The organization of the templates. There's a section on procedures, a section on the staff responsible, timelines, and evidence of practice. Under procedures, you would have suggested prompts are provided as technical assistance in the provided templates. Not all prompts listed must be addressed, and you can create your own prompts in those templates. So the provided templates will have some technical assistance and suggestions in them. The staff responsible do not list people's names because, as we know, there's a lot of moving around. So list their titles, district level, campus level, itinerant level. So list those the position of the person that would be responsible, not their name. The timeline, you could put the timeline when the activities described in the procedures are scheduled, or they could be within a 12-month timeline. And as previously discussed, the evidence of practice. In this section, you would just list your evidence that you use, your evidence of practice, whether it's forms or checklists or training artifacts, data trackers. Those are the list of evidence that you use. You do not upload the evidences of practice into the legal framework, please. Just list what they are on the template. So some of these resources provided in the templates. Within each template, there's a link to related resources that might contain relevant information on the topic. So if you look here in this sample, those related resource links within the template is the Federal Register is one, OSEP, OSERS, and there could be some pertinent court case decisions on the topic. So that would be included on your template there, as you can see on the example. LEAs must ensure, if you're not going to use the template provided, you must ensure that the uploaded or linked operating procedures contain the 4 elements consistent with the templates. Those 4 elements are the procedures, the staff responsible, the timeline, and the evidence of practice. So those must be included. You must include all the required content, and one of the biggest hiccups can be the name. So be sure you use the exact name as it appears as a template. So as you see on this example, it must have the hashtag, FAPE in all caps with no space between the hashtag and FAPE, spaces between each word, and then you must have the number 1 in the parentheses with a space between the word composite and the parentheses. So be sure that it is the exact name all the way down to capitalization, spaces, everything.
Hi, Susan, this is Tammy. Before we move into the monitoring activities, I'm going to just pause. I know we had some questions coming through. Some people were trying to take notes and they wanted us to slow it down a little bit. So is there any questions on opting in or opting out of the optional templates themselves? Leo, I don't know if anyone is, I'm unfamiliar with this format. Is there ability for people to unmute and ask questions at this time, or is this through chat only?
Yes, there is. There's not an option for that. The only thing that is open on these types of webinars is the Q&A. And
Yep.
I think the Q&A, everything in the Q&A seems that it's been responded to or resolved in some fashion.
I think we're getting questions about slowing this part down, Susan. So can we back up a few slides and let's just recap this real quick? We have a little time, so we can do that.
Sure.
Can you just back up to the actual list of templates that are new. Let me just go back to that real quick.
Going there.
So these are the new templates. And so the naming conventions, if you are to use what Susan said, you are to use a different, if you want to make your own or you want to buy a product, in order to get these correct and load up correctly, you would have to use these naming conventions with all the spaces or not spaces, the parentheses, the hashtag, all of those things. So these will be the new ones. And just go ahead and advance there. Of these, like the next few slides, we're just describing that these have no sub-content areas. So you're basically loading up on the template for admission review and dismissal committee meeting and FAPE parent participation. There's no sub-content areas here. The next two had sub-content areas. And we want to advance the slide to those. So those are the sub-content areas that have a few sub-contents under it. Transition graduation, least restrictive environment composite. And then the next one was just describing that the FAPE composite has sub-content areas and then it has sub-content areas, basically. Special factors has additional sub-content areas that are listed here. I think another question we had was, is this going to be available? Yes, we will. And we'll provide you a link to the webpage where this will be posted in the next couple of days. All right, I'm going to go back to chat to see if there's anything else. The number at the end signifies that this is a new template. So in order for us to keep the old templates going and not having to delete and come back, and Lea can talk a little bit about that when she gets to the authoring section, but the one is just signifying these are the 5 new templates. Commercial product, yes, could be some provider like Stetson or others that would provide a product to you. So it's important that they understand, or you understand, that in order to get that product, if you are going to use a product like that, that in order for you to upload the file, it needs to follow this naming convention for that file to upload. No, this is not due now. August 31st, and we'll remind you of that throughout the deck, the rest of the deck. Lea is going to tell you where the templates are in a bit. So I'm just going back through everything, all the questions. Yes. The information, the new templates will have a 1 after them. Some of these questions I'm just going to leave open for Lea because these are things that Lea can cover in just a minute. It's not quite there. You guys are asking advanced questions to later in the deck. Okay. I think we're stuck.
Tammy, were you, did you complete what you wanted to say?
Yep.
We
We're
couldn't
waiting
hear
for-
anymore, so I don't know what you needed.
We need to advance to the next section, please. Monitoring. There we go. It just wasn't moving. I thought it was just me. I thought I was frozen. Okay.
Well, I couldn't hear you for a minute there.
I think you might have been frozen there for just a minute.
So sorry. Okay.
That's good.
Okay, so 2022, 2023 monitoring activities. As we spoke in the beginning, the use of these templates and policy procedures and template uploads are for somewhat for monitoring purposes, the state is required to assure to the federal government that it has policies and procedures in place under that authority requirement, and then that LEAs also have those policies and procedures and practices in place, programs of practice in place. And so we're going to go through a little bit of answering some questions around the monitoring activities that occur based on your uploads. So let's advance, please. So an LEA must be able to demonstrate that its policies and procedures are consistent with those under 300.201, as we said in the beginning. And as a general premise, the presence of a policy does not in itself demonstrate the procedures employed. So that's why we're asking for policies and procedures. So the policy and operating procedure review during the cyclical monitoring schedule is part of the protocol that our review and support teams are employing now. So if you're in a cyclical monitoring event this coming fall or spring, the uploads that you provide in legal framework are the source of data that the LEA, the monitoring team will be accessing in order to look at your policies and procedures and make determinations on whether those are in compliance with the framework pieces. So they will utilize that this fall. They have done that through this last cyclical event for what was uploaded, but again, with additional policies and procedure uploads and requirements, it will expand a bit to those additional templates as well. So in addition to that, LEAs are required annually to engage in the special education self-assessment, which does tie back to your policies and procedures and maintaining your special education policies and operating procedures in compliance with any new changes to regulatory requirements or statutorily provided information through the legal framework. Next slide, please. So to answer the question that is in chat, in Q&A, I'm sorry, the policies and procedures are not due today or next week. You have about 5 months to get these in order and get those uploaded to the framework no later than August 31st. And that allows us to provide any additional support, training, upload support, policy review, policy procedure reviews that you guys need through our ESC supports over the next 5 months. So please reach out when you need support or you have any questions about what you may or may not have included or need to include in those uploads. This gives us adequate TEA review timeline, so we're not rushing to look at your policies and procedures in a monitoring event. So beginning in September 2022, those policies and procedures will begin to be pulled by our review and support teams to start the monitoring activities and give them time to look over and ask and have conversations during that cyclical event for any issues or concerns that they may have with you. And then also this fall, kind of a pre-announcement here, there's going to be some updates to the legal framework website. And so we don't want to have those two things conflated with having to upload in a system that we currently have, and then that may cause some complications or confusions. So we're hoping to get that, that website rebuild and refresh happening in early fall. So we need also, for the purpose of that, get your policies and procedures uploaded into the current system by the 31st. The next, so just some key policy reminders here. We've had some questions over the course of announcing like the expanded policy procedures from that letter Tebby mentioned from September. We had some questions from TASB and some other folks. And so we just want to make sure that we're clear on any policy reminders here that you should review these areas to ensure you have policies and operating procedures that are reviewed, updated, and completed with regard to these 3 items that we've had questions about: the ongoing training opportunities for teachers and students with dyslexia for their continuing professional education hours. So that comes from TEC code 28.054 A through C, and TAC now has that at 232.11E. So if you're unfamiliar with that, we are going to be asking for some assurances with this work as well. And that will be, we'll talk more about that on the 24th, but Just if you're not familiar with this ongoing training opportunity requirement and policy, which TASB has, they are aware of this. And I believe if you are hooked to TASB, then your policies should be intact. But just pay attention to that one a little bit if you haven't already. And then the LEA Compliance Report through Tsds on the number of students enrolled in the LEA who are identified as having dyslexia. That's at TEC 48009. So that's been a question to just make sure that your policies and operating procedures include that requirement to report on those students. And then requirements to ensure that a student transitioning from ECI has an Ifsp adopted or an IEP developed by the child's 3rd birthday. And that's not a new one. I just don't know. That question did come up. So we included it here as key policy reminders to make sure you have operating policies and policies and operating procedures that include these key policies. Okay, let's go to the timeline. Just as a reminder. Sorry, get back to this. Okay, so just as a reminder, today is the 10th. Obviously, we are giving you some information on the new legal framework operating templates. We will be back on the 24th to answer questions, any other questions that arise after this presentation or in the interim. And then between March and August of 2022, ESCs will provide support to all LEA SPED directors and provide the additional technical assistance that's needed to get this work done. SPED directors will update and or develop operating procedures. And by August 31st, those uploads and linked linked operating procedures on the legal framework website will happen. Before Lee starts, I'm going to just go through a few helpful resources here. These are when you are able to access on our website, and we will have this up in the next couple of days. We will blast out the linked address. I think Tabby is going to put that in the chat right now where it will be located. It's on our resources page, but this webinar, as well as any other information we need to provide, will be there as well. But we do have a multitude of helpful resources that can help you with development of your operating procedures and reminders of what should be included in these other resources. The statewide technical assistance networks, just to give a little highlight here on the next slide, is a primary source that most people go to with regards to child find evaluation and ARD supports. They have a listserv like many of our networks do. And you can click on the link. This will be a live link as well in this deck to get to there, but it's also listed on our network resource page. Hopefully these networks are standing up policies, reminders around policies, procedures, and practices that can help you in developing if you are just now starting out or need to refine or redevelop some things. And I would encourage you to reach out to any of these networks for that support as well, or to your ESCs. So I'm going to pause here for a second. I think we had a few more questions. I don't know why anybody would think this is due this month. So it's just not sure, but it is due by August 31st, 2022. The takeaways today are to start the process in reviewing your operating procedures, particularly looking at the templates in the framework and ensuring that you have what you need before it gets too close to August 31st. And so we're trying to get that information to you now so that you can start that process. And provide a rubric crosswalk checklist so we can track progress. I'd like a little bit more information on that. If there's something we can provide, develop for you to help you with this process, we would certainly be open to that idea. Self-assessment due. There's due dates on the review and support website for that. I believe that's later in the fall. I'm sorry. Nope, the self-assessment due. I believe that's in May. But you can check the review and support website, self-assessment, the calendar of events, it should be listed there. Okay, I think we're ready to go to next. Sorry, resource slide again. Can you go back? So just a quick pause here. Again, these are linked pages that when you get your hands on the slide deck, you will be able to link straight to those resource pages. Okay, moving on. I think I'm going to hand this off to Lee Lentz from Region 18.
Okay, thank you. If you'll go to the next slide. When you go into the templates, be sure you're using the templates that begin with a hashtag. If you're the one, if you use the hashtags, you're going to be real happy because you're not going to have a lot to do. Next slide. What you're going to want to do is you want to go into the your administrator account in the authoring system, click on the administrator, and then put in your email and password. Next slide. The process has not changed. Follow these steps to get to the directions. If you follow the directions, you shouldn't have any trouble. What we found was a lot of people didn't follow the directions. If you'll just take the time to read the directions, I think that will really answer a lot of your questions. And if not, your legal framework contact, regional framework contact can walk you through the process. Next question. Next slide, excuse me. If you have any questions, please contact your regional legal framework contact. The map on the framework homepage will give you your contact information if you hover over your region. Next slide. There are two exceptionally helpful documents that are going to be placed in the resource library. This time, and you're going, and this time, I'm sorry. When you go into training, you want to go into training material, and this time you're going to want to go into informational items is where they're going to be posted, and they'll be the first two items that are posted. The first two documents listed is the framework template submission crosswalk. Somebody in the questions asked if there's going to be a crosswalk. Yes, there's a crosswalk. And this tells which frameworks should have which hashtag template. If the item is bolded, it requires uploading or linking. If it's not bolded, the template automatically links. The second template reminds us that the deadline is August the 31st, 2022, and it spells out the 5 templates that must be attached. There were some questions about, someone had a question about, well, they updated their templates last year, and would that be sufficient? They're going to need to go in and save them to this template using the correct template names, and that's all they would have to do. Next slide. Ta-da!
That was super quickly. I'm going to pause. There was some questions about the March 31st date and the old templates going away on March 31st.
Okay, there is not, March 31st is not a current date. What's going to happen is nothing will be deleted until September the 1st, 2022. So anything that you've heard that's outdated, nothing will be deleted until September the 1st, 2022. And the new templates, the ones with the 1 on them, are to be uploaded by August. If you are current with the hashtags, then all you have to do is upload those 5 documents.
Okay.
One thing about the policies about TASB, when I spoke to TASB, what they said was that if you were in cycle 3 and you got your policies, that once your board had adopted the policies, then you would need to contact your TASB representative, so then they could post the online policies. And for everybody who wasn't in cycle 3, they will be getting update 119. And then when your district adopts the policy update 119, then you'll still need to contact your TASB representative, and then it'll get posted.
So one more question, Lee. They want, there's a question, can we upload them now?
The templates are posted in the website, on the legal framework website. Give us a day or two and we'll have those documents, the crosswalks and the other document posted.
Okay, well, let me see. There's one more question. Are you seeing chat, Lee?
Okay.
Actually, it's the Q&A.
Sorry, I keep saying chat. You know what I'm talking about, Leo.
Right, right.
Q&A.
That's correct. What they may need to do is they may need to go in and they may need to copy, and then open up on another screen, open up the template, and then just copy the material over and then save it.
Okay.
And again, the resources will probably be in the resource library within, hopefully by the end of the weekend.
We had this opportunity to talk to you guys today, so we wanted to get this information to you, but as you can see, we are building the plane too. So we'll get everything uploaded, ready to go. You should have everything by the 1st of next week. Okay, so just as a recap here, we're about 10 minutes before. Just as a recap and summary, TA complies with the monitoring and enforcement requirements outlined in regulation using our legal framework as the state's repository. So this is where we're getting the access for monitoring purposes and making sure that LEA policies and operating procedures are in line with the state's the state's policies and procedures that we provide under federal requirements. And board policy, remember that board policy provides the stated written rules that the LEA will follow, while special education operating procedures describe the how and the observable practices evidence the LEA's implementation of those policies and procedures. Board policies and operating procedures must be linked or uploaded in the legal framework by August 31st, 2022. You can locally develop those. They can be bought, or you can use the legal framework optional templates provided for free. And that LEAs upload or link their policies and operating procedures via the administrator account login portal in the legal framework. So if you don't have that yet, if you're a new director and you don't have your account, you need to go ahead and get support to get that set up as soon as possible so you can get going. Next page, please. I think we're at the end. I think we've answered most of the questions. Again, if you have any other questions that come up, we will come back around on the 24th. So please contact your Regional Service Education Center. Your legal framework help is here at frameworkhelp@esc18.net for that account access, or you can contact us here at the Texas Education Agency at sped@tea.texas.gov. We will gather your questions. We will get those answered for you on the 24th. If not, if anything comes afterward, again, we are certainly willing and able to come back and talk about any other concerns or questions that you may have. So I see a bunch of questions about the hashtag and the linking versus uploading. So Lee, do you want to answer? We have a few minutes. Do you want to, or Leo, do we have time to answer a few of these, or do you want us to just?
Sure, we're in a good place. Go right ahead.
Oh, sure. I'll be happy to answer them. Let me start with maybe TEA will have some updates in the future, and in the future they will start with a hashtag. Hashtag just means that they're not the original ones, and don't be afraid of the hashtag. That's just a marker for us. And if you just recently updated yours, well, then you're going to have 5 new ones that you're going to need to update even further. And the difference between the ones that have a 1 in parentheses is there's more questions there. And that way they're more helpful to the monitoring team as they go through when they answer, because they can look and they can read the answers. And I really think it's to your advantage. I mean, of course, I'm partial. I really like our templates. And let me see what else. Okay, we have linked ours. I'm confused about the hashtags. Do we need to change the name of the document? What you need to do is everything, because what we tried to do was we tried to acknowledge that people already had the documents, but what are the templates? One of the things is then we couldn't run a report because there were 3 or 4 different templates. Now there's just going to be 1 template per framework. And so if you'll upload the one with the hashtag, that's what you need to upload. And if you have one and it doesn't have a hashtag, or it has an outdated hashtag, then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to save it and then just put it over there. You're not going to have to redo anything.
I think the crosswalk will help, and we can go through the crosswalk resources next week, but you'll see how you would just upload to 1 framework. It'll carry, like the composite carries several sub-content areas, but you'll only have to upload to 1, right, Lee? You won't have to upload to each one.
That's correct. Like under disabilities, you only have 1. If you've already updated to hashtag evaluation autism, then what you want to do is you want to go into the and maybe this is more confusing than you wanted to, but you put all the disabilities on 1 template and you upload it to autism, and then it links to all the others. And it does the same thing with fake composite.
We're kind of like compartmentalize and simplify a little bit so that you don't have to link to each and every piece that's in the framework. Your template will be comprehensive in that way. It will only require you to link 1 time to a particular framework item, and then everything's there. We'll come back around. We don't have time to go through it today, but we'll come back around on the 24th, and we'll go through, once you've had time to look at the crosswalks and get in there and look at things. If you have any other questions, again, please float those up to Legal Framework or sped@tei.texas.gov, and we'll walk through the companion documents with you on the 24th.
Okay, with that, thank you, Tammy, and to your team of presenters. And thanks everyone for attending, and we'll sign off and see you on Thursday, the 24th at 2 o'clock. Have a good evening. Thank you.
Good job, everybody.